Hi, this time I wanted to talk about the recent part of the Ravenhawk campaign. If you haven't seen it, please check it out because this video is going to contain spoilers. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then continue watching because I think there are some very useful things that were revealed when it comes to running a sandbox setting and also the interaction of the player characters with that setting. Before we actually started to record that session, I told RPG Grandma, Big Bad RPG, and Eli that I was very excited about that part of the Curse of Strahd section of the grand scheme of the campaign. Because mostly, I didn't tell them this specifically, but mostly in many tabletop role-playing game settings, the central areas of the continents, the zones, the areas, the valleys, they are pretty much a crossroads. Many of the threats, the hooks, the background plot lines, what has been happening so far in the campaign, they all come together in those zones. And although the town of Vallaki isn't exactly in the middle of the Valley of Barovia, it is still a bit near the center, a bit more up north. So it makes sense that many factions, activities, happenings could collide there. So it was like a time bomb ready to explode. The moment the player characters start to interact with the sandbox setting, many wheels are put into motion. When they had entered the village, the town of Vallaki, the other factions, the non-player characters, they were still alive in the fiction. They were carrying out their own agendas, advancing their plans. So when they started to interact with the people of Vallaki, many things were already in motion, even before their arrival. This is more difficult for the dungeon master or game master to handle, but I think it's worth it because it makes the world feel so alive. From the very start of the campaign, I started to put things into motion. I started to think, well, if they don't visit the Bistani encampment in the southeast and talk to Madame Eva, or if they spend too much time in Barovia, or if they speed through things and they hurry up, then they will reach Vallaki, and this thing has yet to happen. Or if they didn't take on the windmill, this other thing could happen. So once they went into the town of Vallaki, many things were already put into motion and they had to deal with the present. What has already happened, because they still don't have access, or maybe they won't have access to some sort of time controlling artifact or device, they cannot modify the past, so they have to deal with the present circumstances. That's why near the end of the session, there were some things that were simply unavoidable, some things that they managed to accomplish because they acted in time. For example, I wasn't counting on them taking on many, how would you say, discovering many of the underlying things in Vallaki. But because of their interactions, because they were objective driven, now they even have their hands on the bones. Let's see how they will employ these bones, because if you watch that part of the campaign, you know that now they are facing off against Strahd himself. He is too powerful. I hope they will survive, because a lot of you already know I run campaigns, but if the player characters need to die, they die. The first campaign that I ran here in YouTube, the Dark and Terrible campaign, the story arc, to call it that way, considering that you were to tell a story after the game, you are not telling a story when role-playing, you are playing a role. You are not telling a story about your characters. You are describing their actions, their present actions. You are role-playing. But if you were to tell a story after the game, because that's what you can do, you can tell a story after you finish the session. In the case of the Dark and Terrible campaign, the character arcs of Esben and I forgot the name of your character, Josh. It was Esben, the psychic character. I forgot the name. Okay, Esben and the psionic user, their stories ended. They died. That's it. That's the end of the story. If you were to tell a story about that session. There are so many people obsessed with keeping the player characters alive because of emotional and psychological issues. You need to let go of that because you are not a director directing a movie or a play or telling a story. You're not a storyteller. You are running a role-playing game and things can happen. Characters can die. You are moving, placing, invading the game with your hand of God to manipulate things just the way you want them to proceed. So, as I have said, in the Dark and Terrible campaign, the main characters died. Wasn't it Killian, the psychic character? Well, okay, I think. Killian. I think so. Okay, and in the one-shot, the horror one-shot, the beyond the back rooms, using the behind the walls system, everyone, spoilers, right? Everyone died. That's fine. In many things that happen in real life and in fiction, sometimes the characters do not survive. So, because we are playing this living, breathing sandbox, anything could happen in their fight against Strahd. If Strahd, as it has been hinted during the campaign, Strahd is very much capable of decimating entire parties. So hopefully, let's see if they come up with some creative thing to get out of that alive. They already know that the bones have some sort of power. Let's see. But they were not informed on how to use the bones, right? Now, another important thing. When it comes to players in a sandbox, you want people that are alive, that are enthusiastic, that are proactive. If you get terrible players, you will constantly have to push them around with the living, breathing world. So let's say that you are running a campaign for people that not only they do not roleplay and they are not enthusiastic about interacting with the game world. Every time you finish describing the scene, the situation, the encounter, they're going to be like almost paralyzed, falling asleep. And then the world is alive. It continues, it moves on. So this non-player character, this hazard, this catastrophe, anything could happen that starts to affect those player characters that do not take actions. The world is not frozen in place. Many things are going to happen. The non-player characters are going to be perhaps suspicious about those people just standing in the middle of the street. Or their enemies could attack them, could ambush them. Anything could happen. Maybe a natural disaster. Maybe some sort of weird magical effect takes place, and because they didn't do anything, they are now within the blanket of the spell's effect. Luckily, Big Bad RPG, Eli, and RPG Grandma, they are eager to destroy their enemies, to unravel the clues and mysteries of Barovia. So they are always interacting with the game world, and that's why they have been surviving so far. They are not passive. They affect the game world through their will, using their powers, their skills, their abilities. So those are two important lessons when it comes to sandboxes. As a game master, you want to keep things moving. In the case of the players, you need to interact with the game world. Otherwise, you are nothing. You are wallpaper, you are grass. If you, and not to discriminate against grass, because grass is very important for the ecosystem, but you know what I mean. They're just part of the scenery in that fictional setting. They are not, the grass is not going to save the world. Well, the grass is not going to defeat the villains, it's not going to build the structures to protect people, etc., right? When it comes to the non-player characters, they also have their own volition, their independent thoughts, their agendas, their hopes and dreams and desires. Take a look at Ismark and Irina. They were traveling with the player characters, but also the children. And suddenly, one of the children, Arabella, she decided to sneak away because she's a Vistani. She's very knowledgeable when it comes to being stealthy and deceitful. So she easily sneaked her way. She left that note telling them that there is a reward waiting for them in that dangerous Vistani camp. It could be a trap, or there could be a reward. Who knows? They already have the details that the Vistani from that camp, they are completely loyal to Strahd. But they also know that this girl could be grateful because they rescued her. Or maybe she is quite evil and she doesn't care. It's all about taking that calculated risk. When it comes to Ismark and Irina specifically, they were not connected like Siamese twins to the party of adventurers. They were doing their own things. When they went into the temple, they started to speak with Lucian and presenting the children so that Lucian would be able to give them shelter. The player characters went outside to speak with Jeska and Milivosh to understand the mystery behind the bones, who took them. When they went into the coffin maker's shop or establishment, Ismark and Irina were suddenly contacted by this man. That could have been dangerous. It could have been a trap. What if it's an enemy that is drawing away Ismark and Irina, getting the group separated? But in this case, thankfully, it was an ally. The good war ravens, apparently good war ravens, that came to help the player characters against the vampires. In that case, it was a positive outcome. But, like I said, what if it was an enemy, an agent of Strahd, and now perhaps they kill Ismark and they capture Irina? That could have been a possibility, right? So the player characters and the non-player characters, they are alive because the players are controlling the player characters, and the game master, dungeon master, referee is running the non-player characters. They are carrying out their own things, looking around, talking to other people, sometimes obtaining valuable information, sometimes obtaining false rumors. I wonder where Ismark and Irina are right now that the player characters are confronting Strahd. I also think that Jace and Marcus had some very important moments to shine when it comes to diplomacy. In this particular part, Mu was mostly about, what would you say, neutralizing or frustrating the enemies in battle because of her, how would you say? I was going to say like her tanky presence, but there is a better way to put it. Powerhouse presence. Taking on the brunt of the enemy force. And also finding out about the technology when they were examining the Blinsky's store. Now she knows that perhaps some of the technology from Barrier Peaks made its way into Barovia because of the devices, the mechanisms on the toys. Very interesting. And they also know that there is perhaps another artifact, living construct artifact, moving around inside the castle Ravenloft. Who knows? But when it comes to Jace and Marcus, they had some very interesting diplomatic developments, obtaining information about the bones, getting inside the coffin maker's shop, avoiding confrontation with Isaac. Sometimes in very corrupt cities or towns or whatever, it is easier to pretend to be one of them in order to make things or get things done. And so they managed to, that's why they were able to go to Marcus's aid, because Isaac is pretty much was distracted, lulled in a sense of security, thinking that Jace is actually like him, like he has his same values. When it comes to Marcus bidding his time, that's how you say it, right? Or making some time, stalling, talking to Strahd so that the other members of the party were able to get to the temple in time and survive, potentially, hopefully survive the encounter with Strahd. And it was such a pleasure to roleplay Strahd. Roleplay all of those. Every time I roleplay any of those famous Dungeons and Dragons characters, Elminster, in this Mordenkainen, in this case, my first time roleplaying as Mordenkainen, Strahd, it was also my first time roleplaying as Strahd. I still have many other... Well, I have roleplayed as Dritz and as Wolfgar, but there are still so many famous characters that I have yet to roleplay as. And when it comes to Strahd, I really wanted to express that double-sided nature so iconic of vampires, that they seem so elegant, refined, a lot of them a bit exotic because of their accent, their mannerisms, their particular protocols, but at the same time they have that monster, that rage encased there for centuries, just waiting to come out. So it's all about talking like this and very relaxed and suddenly just, exploding. That was very fun. I really hope the group survives. If they die, if they total party kill, maybe we could continue the campaign with other player characters that have also been... I've just arrived to the Valley of Barovia. It has to do with consideration of levels. It also depends if the players want to continue. But, like I said, anything goes. They have reached that moment because of the free agency, their interaction with the game world, the plans of the non-player characters, the machinations of Strahd. They got to that point. Strahd even killed Lucian because nothing was changed in the temple. That is, Lucian was not perhaps convinced to step out of the temple, or the bones were not retrieved in time because the players had to stall a bit. That is, they took a bit of time getting to Vallaki as they dealt with the windmill, with Madame Eva, with helping Mordenkainen, interacting with Blinsky. Perhaps just a few more minutes, perhaps they could have reached the cleric Lucian with the bones and something could have happened, but it was not so. And it was also convenient and unfortunate for Strahd that the festival carried out by the Burgomaster, the insane Burgomaster, was just happening. So another thing that hampered the trajectory towards the temple. I think Jace also did great when it comes to causing this riot when it started to rain and the Burgomaster couldn't light the wicker ball. Now you have a bit of a revolt, and you also have the forces of Strahd attacking the town. So yes, very exciting overall. I really hope they manage to survive. We'll see how things go. Oh, and in case Big RPG Grandma or Big Bell RPG or Eli are watching this, make sure you use your inspiration points. You didn't use them at all. I can reward them several times depending on the way that you roleplay the background of your characters. I am always looking for an opportunity to reward you with those inspiration points. But if you don't use them, I cannot reward them because you can only have one inspiration point. So yes, definitely keep on using them for those advantages against the vampires. I wonder if the war ravens didn't reach you because Irina and Ismark were outside talking to them, and suddenly, oh, they went into the coffin maker's shop, and the war ravens. They have been taking a bit of time there. Let's go investigate because we have been observing you guys, etc. If they were not there, perhaps they could have taken a lot more damage. And who knows? Vampires are not easy opponents. Maybe they could have ended up either very wounded or perhaps with some casualties. So I hope they use their inspiration points when it comes to fighting Strahd, and they don't forget about Mordenkainen's charm. They are going to need all the help they can get. What it is obvious for you, however, is that things were put into motion thanks to the player characters as well. That riot, what is going to happen now? That the Vallaki is being attacked not only by the forces of Strahd, but also the people clashing with the Baron. They are not believing in him, the Burgomaster. And what about Isaac? What about their War Raven allies? Will Mordenkainen show up? Or is he completely oblivious to what is going on in Vallaki? He's looking for his staff and his book. So yes, I hope you found this video informative and entertaining. Let me know your own thoughts. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you, and see you later.